The sun hung low, an amber flame slipping behind the jagged horizon of Thebes, casting the city in a bruised twilight. Nanda perched atop a weathered ledge, scanning the terrain before her. Another temple, she sighed. You'd think these sorcerers could mix things up a bit. The wind tugged at her fur, carrying the scent of burning incense. Her tail thudded absently, her hook like a drumstick beating a rhythm, as she studied the towering structure ahead. Yet more monolithic pillars, their surfaces covered in hieroglyphs, stories of gods and destruction, reminded her of the overwhelming ego that filled this place. So much for humility, she snarled, and some people think that cats are full of themselves. Her eyes narrowed as she took in the temple's imposing facade. There was something off about it, something in the air like the stillness before a storm, dark and inevitable. It wasn't fear, at least, not exactly. Fear wasn't new to her, but this sensation. It felt deeper. The tension was thick, almost tangible, but Nanda had seen too much already to be unsettled by it. She pushed herself off the ledge, her senses alert. The heavy scent of incense grew stronger as she moved, each step taking her closer to the temple that loomed before her. Silent and imposing. Its massive stone doors were slightly ajar, an invitation, or perhaps a warning. Stronger than I realize, she muttered, echoing Bastet's cryptic words, rolling her eyes. Very helpful. Next time, try clearer instructions. Her little furry drumstick lashed against the floor harder than before, betraying a flicker of frustration. A divine pendant and vague advice were nice, but not exactly practical when she was up against an ancient magic meddler. With a stretched yawn that hid her readiness, Nanda slowly padded forward, feigning disinterest. The temple beckoned, but she was no stranger to the weight of destiny pressing down on her. As she neared the entrance, something caught her eye, something that gave her pause in her pause. The hieroglyphs on the outer columns shimmered unnaturally, as if the light itself was twisting and dancing over them. Nanda squinted, her sharp gaze catching the twisted forms of jackals and serpents, locked in an eternal dance of death and rebirth. A low growl rumbled in her throat, but she swallowed it. No need to hiss at the decorations just yet. The doors groaned as she slipped through the gap, and the darkness within closed around her like a thick cloak. Immediately, the temperature dropped, and Nanda's whiskers twitched in response. It felt like stepping into a tomb, or worse, a place long forgotten by the sun's warmth. Great. Just where I wanted to spend my evening, she thought, adjusting her eyesight once again. She moved silently through the entry hall, her eyes scanning the stone walls lined with statues of gods, their stone faces impassive, eyes fixed on her with centuries of unblinking watchfulness. The shadows here stretched deep, longer than they should have been. Every so often she swore she heard faint whispers, voices too soft to understand, as if they were carried from another realm. If I were a sorcerer hiding a mystical scarab, where would I be? She mused, her thoughts returning to the relic she sought, the Golden Scarab. A powerful artifact, twisted by Shempu's dark magic. Just thinking about him sent a shiver down her spine. She had heard stories, whispers in the dead of night about Shempu's rise to power, his obsession with dangerous artifacts, his dabbling in magic that even the gods feared, dark rituals that could tear apart the fabric of time. Ambition like that was dangerous, not to mention misguided. Power, 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 she thought, her lips twitching into a wry grin. Shempu never learned the art of contentment. Her thoughts drifted as if carried by the rhythm of her paw steps. How had she ended up entangled in an ancient conspiracy? A cat who preferred sunny naps and the occasional chase? She wasn't like most other cats, for sure, it is true. Smarter? Yes. More capable? Certainly. A hero, though? A savior of worlds? That was never meant to be her life. Her life was supposed to be lounging, eating, and mocking humans from high places. Maybe I should have stuck with something simpler, she thought. Like sleeping. I'm excellent at that. A scraping sound, low and deliberate, snapped Nanda back to the present. Her ears swiveled, zeroing in on the noise. She crouched low, blending into the shadows, moving with stealth. Ahead, the corridor opened into a vast chamber. Nanda's eyes narrowed as she took in the scene. At the center of the chamber, bathed in a faint pool of light, stood a pedestal. Atop it was the Golden Scarab, glowing softly, almost serenely. Well, There it is. The giant glowing beetle of doom, Nanda thought. Perfect. But why so out in the open? I thought something like this would be better hidden. Her instinct screamed that it wasn't going to be that simple. No doubt Shempu had set a trap, and he was probably lurking nearby, waiting. The air crackled with ancient, thick, and oppressive magic. She lingered momentarily at the threshold, considering her options. Running would likely end in disaster. Sorcerers like Shempu always had backup plans. Subtlety. Nanda. Think. What would Bastet do? She mused, frowning. Probably something graceful and mystical. Ugh, fine. With a deep breath, she sharpened her focus. Silently, she padded into the chamber, sticking to the edges. Her eyes flicking between the pedestal and the shadows. Her ears were pricked, listening for any movement. As she circled the room, she felt a static electricity all around getting stronger. Then she heard it, a soft rustling, barely perceptible. Her green eyes snapped to the source, and there, half hidden in the shadows, stood Shempu. Tall, gaunt, and draped in dark robes that absorbed the room's light. His presence was as cold as the temple itself. His eyes, black as obsidian, though she knew they could shift to a dazzling blue, met her own with unnerving intensity. A smile curled at the corners of his thin lips. So, he said, his voice like a hiss through the cracks of a tomb, the little cat has come to play. Nanda's tale betrayed her irritation, but her expression remained neutral. Funny, she replied. I was just about to say the same thing, though I must admit I expected you to be taller. Just how tall she expected him to be, who knows? For Shempu was actually very tall, though at her words, his smile faltered for the briefest moment. He stepped forward, slow and deliberate, as if time meant nothing to him. You have no idea what you're meddling with, creature. Nanda's eyes narrowed. Creature? That's rich, coming from the man who talks to glowing beetles. Shempu's sneer deepened. Mock all you like, but the power of the scarab is beyond anything you can comprehend. Really? Nanda tilted her head in mock curiosity. Because from where I'm sitting, it just looks like a particularly shiny bug. Shempu's calm shattered. His expression twisted with barely controlled fury. His long, pale fingers flexed at his sides, curling inward like the talons of a vulture. The air around him began to ripple, warping the space as if reality itself bent under the weight of his dark intent. A low, unsettling hum vibrated through the room, growing louder with each passing second. From the tips of Shempu's fingers, dark tendrils of magic unfurled, slithering like serpents freed from their cage. They weren't mere shadows, but something far more sinister, and alive with a pulsating, unnatural energy. The tendrils twisted and writhed in the air, thick and inky, leaving behind an acrid scent of burnt ozone as they slithered toward the pedestal. Their movement was slow, deliberate, savoring the power they would soon claim. The room darkened in response, the flickering torchlight dimming, as if it feared what Shempu was summoning. The tendrils hissed softly as they reached out, brushing against the stone with an almost intimate touch, before tightening their grip like strangling vines. It felt as if the very air had turned to poison, and was a heavy, ancient, malevolent force that pressed down on everything, making it harder to breathe. Do you think your wit will save you, cat? Shempu growled, his voice low and dangerous. This is no game. Nanda didn't flinch. Oh, I know it's not a game, she replied, stepping closer to the pedestal, her eyes locked on Shempu. Games are fun. This is just tedious. Shempu's eyes flashed with fury, and the shadows in the room seemed to thicken, drawn toward him like moths to a flame. Nanda felt his magic pressing down on her, suffocating and cold, but she held her ground. Fear was not something she indulged in easily. The pendant around her neck began to glow, a constant shimmer that seemed to align with the scarab. Good timing, Nanda thought, the humor she used to steady herself bubbling beneath the surface. At least one of us is prepared. As Shempu raised his hands, preparing to unleash whatever dark spell he'd been brewing, Nanda's mind raced. She was fast, but not faster than magic. She needed to outthink him, not outmaneuver him. That had always been her strength, staying 2 steps ahead. The pendant's glow grew brighter, casting a soft golden light across the chamber. Nanda felt its warmth spreading through her chest, a sense of calm settling over her. Thank you, Bastet, she thought, though she wouldn't admit out loud that she appreciated the divine backup. She had her pride. Shampoo's magic swirled around him, black tendrils reaching for the pedestal, eager to reclaim the scarab he'd placed as a trap. His obsidian eyes gleamed with dark power, the air crackling with tension. He clearly thought the battle was already won. Typical villain arrogance. You think you can stop me, little cat? Shampoo's voice dripped with venom. The scarab belongs to me. It has always belonged to me. Nanda felt the familiar flicker of her quick wit as Shampoo's words hit their mark. Her nerves were there, but so was that sharp edge of defiance. Another quip bubbled to the surface. Belongs to you? Did you have to fill out a form for that? Or is it more of a finder's keeper situation? She said, mood deceptively light despite the tension in the room. Shampoo's sneer deepened, the air growing heavier with his disdain. You are insignificant, a mere pawn in a game you cannot begin to comprehend. At the word pawn, Nanda's ears perked up. Her stomach growled, a reminder that she hadn't eaten all day. Prawns. Yum. Yum, she thought wistfully. She loved prawns. So succulent, so juicy. Especially the big ones. Tiger prawns? She took a deliberate step forward, eyes never leaving Shampoo's, unblinking. See, that's where you're wrong. I'm not a prawn, a pawn. I'm the one who knocks over the board when things get boring. The tension in the room thickened, the magic pressing against her skin like a heavy cloak. It felt suffocating, but not enough to make her falter. Her mind sharpened, like a blade being honed. Shampoo was powerful, but that kind of power was always overestimated, especially by people like him. Arrogance was his weakness, and she knew exactly how to exploit it. The pendant at her neck pulsed, its golden light growing brighter. It wasn't just an artifact. It was a connection, an anchor to something deeper. The scarab and the pendant were linked, two halves of the same whole, a source of divine energy. And the magic within her, fueled by Bastet, was now rising to meet the challenge. Shampoo's hands rose again, and the serpentine tendrils coiled, ready to strike. The air hummed with the power he wielded. But Nanda didn't move. She didn't flinch. She was ready. You may have the favor of the goddess, Shampoo hissed, his eyes narrowing, but it will not save you. Nanda's green eyes gleamed with amusement. Good to know you're concerned about my safety, she said with a sly grin, then paused to lick her paw in the most nonchalant way. But I've never needed saving. Thanks anyway. Without warning, Shampoo unleashed his magic. The black tendrils shot toward her with blinding speed, crackling with dark energy. But Nanda was faster. She darted to the side in a blur of motion, the pendant flaring with golden light in response to her urgency. The tendrils slammed into the stone floor with a deafening crash, exploding into a shower of sparks and shadows. Nanda landed lightly a few feet away, her tail flicking in mild amusement. Nice try. Shampoo snarled, his patience clearly wearing thin. He raised his hands again, and the shadows around him surged forward, an overwhelming tidal wave of darkness that seemed intent on swallowing the entire room. The force of it was almost suffocating. But Nanda wasn't afraid. She wasn't going to fight Shampoo's darkness with more power. She was going to outsmart him. As the wave of shadow magic surged toward Nanda, she focused intently on the pendant. Its light grew brighter in response to her will, the connection to the scarab pulsing in her mind. Clear, strong, and unmistakable. There had to be a way to stop Shampoo, to break his hold over the temple and the scarab. Let me guess, Nanda called out, her voice slicing through the rising storm of magic. You think power is about control, taking what isn't yours, bending the world to your will. Shampoo's eyes narrowed, his face a mask of cold determination as he channeled more power into his attack. Power is control. It is domination. It is mastery over those too weak to wield it. Nanda's whiskers twitched with amusement. And that's where you're wrong. With a surge of energy, she leaped toward the pedestal. The pendant blazed with golden light, brighter than ever. The scarab's ancient magic hummed through the air, calling to her, urging her forward. Shampoo's shadows lunged, but Nanda was already in motion, darting through the snapping tendrils with effortless grace, each movement precise and fluid. She reached the pedestal in a heartbeat, her paws making no sound as she landed beside the scarab. The dark energy surrounding it was terrifying, but Nanda didn't hesitate. She extended one paw, gently tapping the scarab. As her touch made contact, the pendant's energy surged through her, the two magical forces merging. For a brief moment, time itself seemed to freeze. The shadows, the air, even the magic held their breath, suspended in fragile stillness. The world seemed to pause, waiting. Then, with a brilliant flash, the scarab and pendant fused together in a dazzling explosion of light. A radiant wave of golden energy flooded the chamber, its brilliance so pure and overwhelming that it chased the shadows to the furthest corners. The sheer force of it sent Shampoo sprawling, throwing him backward as though he were nothing more than a rag doll. His dark magic, once serpentine and oppressive, writhed and disintegrated, unraveling like smoke consumed by the morning sun. Nanda blinked, her vision momentarily blinded by the explosion of light. When her sight returned, she saw Shampoo struggling to rise, his face a mask of rage and disbelief. "You, how?" he sputtered, his voice shaky with fury. Nanda, calm as ever, sat beside the pedestal and licked her paw, glancing at Shampoo with an air of mild disinterest. "You're not the only one who knows how to use magic, Shampoo. Maybe next time, don't underestimate the cat." Shampoo snarled, his frustration palpable, but before he could gather his strength for another attack, the light from the now unified scarab and pendant flared again. This time, the light was blinding, overwhelming. Nanda felt the full weight of the ancient power coursing through the chamber. The temple groaned as though it were alive, ancient stones shuddering under the strain. Dust cascaded from the ceiling, and the walls seemed to tremble, struggling to bear the intensity of the power. Nanda stood tall amidst the chaos, her expression fierce yet calm. "It seems your time has run out, Mr. Magic Man." Shampoo's eyes widened in panic as fissures snaked across the floor beneath him, dark energy spiraling out of control like a wild storm. His hands trembled as he tried to grasp the fading power, but it slipped through his fingers like sand. A scream of rage tore from his throat, raw and furious. But the temple answered with an unrelenting roar. The scarab's ancient force was undoing his twisted work. The ground beneath him split wide open, a jagged chasm opening as dark magic consumed itself in a violent frenzy. His final desperate cry echoed through the chamber. "This isn't over, cat. I will retoo." His words were abruptly cut short, as the earth swallowed him whole, making him vanish into the abyss he had sought to control, consumed by the very power that had betrayed him. Nanda watched as the dust settled, her eyes gleaming with quiet triumph. The temple was still, the oppressive darkness lifted and replaced by a soft golden glow. The scarab, now fused with the pendant, rested peacefully on its pedestal, its power not just restored but amplified, emanating a vibrant energy that seemed to hum with life. "Well," she murmured to herself, stretching lazily, "that was dramatic." Stepping into the cool night air, she looked up at the twinkling stars above Thebes. "Another job well done," she said quietly. "Maybe now I can finally get some rest." But even as she spoke, she knew that her role was far from over. Shampoo might be gone for now, but the world was full of dangers, those who sought power without understanding its cost. She paused, considering the weight of her responsibilities. Suddenly, a shimmering blue light erupted from the scarab on the pedestal, slowly expanding before it began to envelop her. She felt a pulling sensation, which was as though time itself were reaching out to her, beckoning her toward another adventure. With a strange mix of curiosity and apprehension, Nanda leaped toward the pedestal. The light from the scarab intensified, and before she could process what was happening, the ground beneath her disappeared. The world dissolved into a swirling vortex of colors and sounds, pulling her through time. The familiar streets of Thebes faded, replaced by chaotic flashes of golden sands and deep shadows. Nanda's sharp mind focused on the rush of wind and the hum of ancient voices. Right, she thought wryly, hurtling through, although she was yet to realize time. No big deal, just another day in the life of a cat. The disorienting sensations twisted around her as time itself warped. Seconds felt like centuries. For a moment, she feared she might unravel, dissolving into the stream like an ancient whisper. "Hold it together, Nanda," she scolded herself. "Focus. You've got a job to do."